You're listening to Siris Says Podcast. Join us as we transcend cultural barriers and elevate diverse voices. Here, we inspire, inform, and empower one story at a time. Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Siris Says again. So if you guys are a new listener, welcome. And if you are a returning listener, we welcome you again. This is somebody that I have right next to me. I consider him a mentor, somebody who is really experienced in sales at all different levels. He's been in the biology industry for a long time.
Since the beginning.
And his name is Dennis Price.
Hi.
Hey,
y'all.
Dennis.
Thanks for being here.
So, Dennis, how are you doing lately?
I am busy, and at the end of the year, right? We have Christmas. There's so much to sew up. There's so much to do. It's almost, I hate to say this, but sometimes I love December 28th more than I like December 24th.
Oof. I think I understand why.
Yeah. There's just so much to do. And, you have to
Yeah.
this is a good time of the year to pay attention to your family, to rebuild those bonds.
True.
But, business goes on. Business.
Absolutely.
Work.
I would like to have you introduce yourself to the listeners. Like, what makes Dennis? I talk about you're my mentor. And the reason why I talk about you being my mentor was because you're so experienced in what you do. But also, I love your technique of how to sell and make it personable. Like, not like a robot, you're
As
not
it
like
should
the
be.
old-fashioned, car seller. You're actually
I
very
hate that.
different from that, and that's what really made me gravitate towards you.
Oh, I thank you.
Yeah.
So what makes Dennis? I am sure people still asking that question this day. And sometimes I try to figure out what makes me me. And all I can tell you is, like most people, I'm complex, like everybody is. But my complexities are complexities on complexities. I'm curious about the strangest things. And believe it or not, a friend of mine, way back in the day, she bought me a visit to a psychic the psychic scared me. She frightened me. She knew stuff that I didn't even think was possible. So I'm going to say this right now. I'm a scientist, will always be a scientist. Psychic phenomenon, it rings true.
It sparks something in you.
Yes,
That
that's exactly right, that there's something beyond what I can see, right? And if I can get a little scientific nerdy here, we see such a limited amount of the electromagnetic spectrum. We only have a couple of senses here that are any good, right? And we see so little of the universe, there's so much that we can't see. But I don't want to get into conspiracy theory here, but I can tell you she knew stuff about me and my friends that freaked them out. And one of the things she said about me is I'm the only one that would notice that the ballerina that's dancing has her laces untied on her shoes.
Detail.
Yeah.
Attention to detail.
And it's not that I want to see that. I kind of want to enjoy the performance. But I go, oh my God, her things are undone. Is this going to be is she going to trip or anything like that? So I tend to notice those things. It's good. I think it came from my parents. So I've always loved my parents, but they were flawed people like I am, like everyone else is. So my father was a drill instructor in the military. He fought in World War II, landed on Normandy Beach, survived that, went through the hedgerows, survived that, joined up with Patton's army, survived that, and that's how he met my mother, who lived through World War II. So these are not normal people that I had for parents. They had a different view of life, that life can end like that. So they kind of lived in the moment sometimes. When times were good, they weren't the best communicators. When times were bad, they were wonderful to be around because they could just walk right through it. They go, I've been down this road before. But I remember asking, how come they don't have a living room like all the other kids I know? Because, they have decorations and whatnot. And my mom had a couple. And she essentially said, because Dennis, we've had things taken away from us so many times, we just feel it's a burden to have them.
Oh, wow.
So this is the mindset that I came from. So I think the attention to detail came when I came home. I didn't know what kind of mood
your parents were going to be in.
Yeah, and I had an older brother and an older sister. I kind of joke, I hate chicken legs, can't stand them, because that's what they gave me.
How did they even buy that? Like, can you find it? Is it common to find in the butchery?
Well, back then it was, right?
Oh, back
so my
then.
mom would get a whole chicken and then cut it into pieces. And because I'm a kid, right, I don't know the difference between a breast, right? But as soon as I found out, oh my God, there's this thing called a chicken breast, and it's amazing. So I was shaped by this good family. I mean, my mom, dad, all three of us kids are successful, and they went on to raise kids of their own. It made me pay attention to everything because the games that they played
I also came from a mom where they run away from World War,
Yeah, exactly.
Korea. My mom is South Korean. My mom, my grandfather came because North Korea and South Korean tension was very heavy, so they left.
Significantly.
There's traumas in her, and so like you didn't know coming home what mood she was in. And I think when you grow up like that as a kid, it makes you more empathetic.
Yes.
No by choice, but because of trauma, right? By trauma,
Correct.
because you're so aware of the room as you step in. And it's very hard. It's very hard. But also, I think it became a superpower for you because you got to use it in sales.
It really magnified
Right?
itself in sales. No, you've hit the nail on the head, because I wanted to be a chemist since I was 8 years old. So I had a high school chemistry book when I
Wow.
was 8, and I read it.
What a nerd.
I know, right? A big nerd, but I was also a musician. I really wanted to become a musician. My parents talked me out of it. So music's a big part of my life, but I loved being a scientist. And one of the things that was strange is when I worked in the lab, someone would say, hey, we got a customer calling. Who wants to talk to them? And I go, oh, I'll do it. And they go, are you sure? They're kind of annoying. And I go, well, they have questions. You work in the damn lab. You should be able to explain this. So I would sit down with them, and not knowing who they were. Some of them were like, major engineers owning these big corporations, and they're mad. And I'm like going, okay, I understand you're mad, but let me explain this to you so you don't have to be mad anymore, because we shouldn't have to do that. And then they started to trust me, and then they would come over, and my boss would say, oh, they're going to come over. You really got it. And I go, John? John's coming over? You call him John? Yeah, he's John. I mean, he wants me to call him John. What are you talking about? Oh my God, he's our huge customer. And I go, oh, well, that's nice.
So
right?
treating everybody equally, because a lot of those really smart PhD people, which we've dealt plenty in our careers
Correct.
before, most people think, oh, you have to be very smart, or you have to talk to them very like highly. And honestly, a lot of them, they don't like it. They actually hate it.
Well, they don't. It's not about me. It's about my question. Because you'll hear in sales where a customer will ask a particular question, and then your science team will say, it depends. And it's one of the worst things, because that's not what they want to hear, because you're not answering their question. They get mad, at least on a subconscious level. And you just need to sit there and go, well, depends on what you want out of this, right? And then you put it back on them, and then you get that transparency. They open up, and as soon as you can prove that you're a problem solver for you, there's a human bond there. And sales is about that human bond. And I know everyone says, no, it isn't. I'm going, guys, you're wrong. Been doing this way too long.
Yeah.
It's humans talking to humans. You've got to make that human connection, because, and I think now more than ever, I think people want this.
I had experience and the opportunity to do sales for a little while, and like there was no training. Like when they say training, they mean, oh, here's the system. This is how the system works. When going in as somebody who had no experience with sales, like zero, right? And then all they're teaching you is just like, oh, go to the customer and ask them what they want. Now, if you've ever had to deal with pharmaceuticals, they don't like to share.
They will not share.
They will not share. So you have to go around, and that personable you were just talking about, it's very key to get them to open up to you. But they don't tell you that,
No, they don't. And I was telling, when I was at one position, and I say this no matter where I'm at, I go, what do we sell? And they go, oh, we sell this product, sell this instrument. And I go, nope, what do we sell? We sell value? Nope, what do we sell? And there was one particular individual that we both know, she got a little frustrated. And she says, okay, answer the question. I said, well, I'm trying to get you to answer it, but I will. The first thing you sell is trust and confidence. Once you have that, once they said, okay, this person is actually listening to me, because one of the best things you can get is a customer who's complaining.
Yeah.
Right? Because they actually care, or they wouldn't complain. They just wouldn't call you again.
I actually like the ones that are a little bit borderline annoying.
Yes. That's exactly
because,
right.
Like, they point out things about the product, or they point out things about the service. Otherwise, it's impossible in this day and age to get feedback from people.
They won't.
They don't, because like if everything is working really well for the customers that are happy, they really don't share. Even if you push them like, hey, we know you love the product, but can you give us a feedback? They're like,
nah, it's
gotta
good.
move on.
It's
like
good.
I have bigger problems, to worry about.
Well, they do. No, they.
So yeah.
So the first thing you sell is trust and confidence.
Yes.
Right. Then
That's
you
key.
sell a solution.
A solution,
right?
yes.
So now that we're talking as people, now you're telling me what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I mean, I was saying this back in 2004 because I would go to these customers. This was before large molecule. This was small molecule. Small molecule was waning. Large molecules were coming up, and they say, "Well, can you come and do this?" And I go, "Do what?"
Just to give the listeners, small molecule, what do you mean by small molecule? Because most people are going to be like, what do you mean by
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
so this will be a brief history on pharmaceuticals. So back in the day, right, it was plant. Everything was plant based. You had a hex or a witch doctor or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and they knew a particular plant could potentially treat a particular disease.
Right.
And it was, I mean, talk about trial and error. Everything was a clinical trial, and until someone had the wisdom. So once that happened, it was really the Germans that kind of developed this, where they said, okay, we know it's in a plant. Chemistry was really developed probably in the 1800s, the early 1900s by the Germans.
Yes.
And there's a whole nother backstory on that. One of the most interesting books I've ever read is called The Alchemy of Air. Highly recommend it because we talk about why Charles Darwin ended where he ended. He wasn't a botanist. That was
No.
a side hobby. He was hired. So when you left England and you had to get to Asia, you had to go Terra del Fuego down in Argentina. Really horrible area. Massive storms, huge waves. So
Yeah.
the voyage was, 18, 20, 30 weeks of sheer boredom, and then about a week or two of sheer terror because your ship,
Yeah, tilt.
right. I mean, so a lot of these captains would just jump off the ship and die. I mean, they just committed suicide. So they said, we can't do this.
Ooh.
At least this is how the book explains it. So they would hire a gentleman to entertain him. So he could talk whatever they talked about at the time. And that's how Charles Darwin got his start.
I didn't even know that's how he got his start. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that weird? But
That
this is the part of
like
history
an
that
entertainment. Says when? That's crazy.
but it's kind of like someone to make sure that you don't go batty, right?
My gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Talk to some sense into you, essentially. Don't jump off.
keep you
Yeah.
sane, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he can't talk because the British Navy had a very strict. The captain can't get friendly with because it's strict discipline and all of that. So he couldn't talk to them.
It's
So
like a culture thing back then.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And his biggest discovery, it was definitely the Galapagos Islands and his theory, but he tripped over something, that vast desert that was full of sodium nitrate. And why sodium nitrate? It's a fertilizer. Read the book. You will not put it down.
Do you have a specific number of things that are important for somebody who is starting on sales? People who are like, hey, I want to try it, because sales, it's kind of lucrative in a way because
It can be.
It can be lucrative for a lot of
can be.
people, but a lot of people are afraid of selling. So, but I know you have really good advice on how to
think so.
approach it.
So as far as skills, one of the things I learned once I got into sales is independent of your personality, even if you're quiet, you can still be a good salesperson. So the quiet, shy people can be.
Okay.
You just have to
Good
take
point.
another approach to get information. I'm not the quiet sales rep. I'm not loud, at least I hope I'm not. But I love kind of not shocking my customers, but I want them to get out of their comfort level. I want them to understand that I'm willing to advocate for them. And I have to go through this with every new customer. The customers I've had for 10 or 15 years, they love me. They just call me up and say, hey, this is what I need. I already know. I've already figured that out with them. And if I have any questions, I'll just say, okay, last time this happened. It's kind of like a family member, right? You just don't know what they want. So you can really have any type of personality you want. But here's what I will tell you. If you're a shrinking violet, that will end quickly in sales because you can't be. One of my mentors told me that sales is very confrontational, at least initially it is, right? Because I've had so many customers over the years say, you just want to take my money. And I go, really? I can do that? I mean, if I can do that, shouldn't I be doing that from Hawaii?
Yeah.
Right? And then, well, you just want to sell me something. And I go, I wish I could do that, but I can't. I have to give you enough data, enough information, because I want you to make an informed choice, because I don't want your business now. I want your business 5, 10 years. That's something that might be in the Sales 102 course. And that is, you have to take care of your customers where you live, because if you don't, it doesn't matter if you get another job, they won't talk to you. And you have to build your brand. This gets me in trouble But I say I don't work for the company, I work for my customers.
If you want to be truly successful.
The sales will test you beyond the limits that you thought you had. Because when I worked in the lab, I ran 8 different types of instruments, super sensitive parts per trillion instruments, where it took 2 weeks just to prep the instrument, not even the sample.
Yeah.
And I love that part, but every day I knew what that instrument was going to do.
The process.
Right? That was never going to change. People will change throughout the day on you.
True.
And so you become more empathetic in a sense. You become more self-aware of yourself. Although when you initially get in sales, let me tell you, one of your biggest problems is your ego's going to swell because you think you're superhuman because you got a big sale. And maybe it was because of you, maybe because it was luck. You know, all these are factors. So I guess what I'm saying is you will learn more about yourself than you have ever cared to once you go into sales. And part of that driver is, you know how they talk about when you're on your phone or social media, you get that dopamine?
Yes.
Sales is far worse.
Oh, yeah. Just going to conferences.
Yes.
If you ever have a chance to go to any conference of any sort, you get this rush, right? Because you're seeing people, you're talking to so many people. Like, it's insane. Like, the hype, but then the low is really bad when you get home that you're exhausted.
So stress relief is very important. If you do go into sales, you need stress relief.
Good point.
Very
good point.
Can't be alcohol or other illicit substances.
Question though, when you first started, you used to go to those outlets and then you switched them over time?
No, I was never, I grew up in a time when illicit drugs were quite common in college.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't begrudge people.
Yeah.
Right? If, you know, sometimes people need a crutch. Mine's chocolate, just want to let you know. So getting back to if you want to go into sales, if you really want to get into it, you're going to have to step up.
Number one, okay.
Right? So there is, how do I want to say that? You have to be bold. Okay. Because that's what's going to be expected from you. And
can you become a bold person with practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So there was a time when everyone was pretty much bold in the world because, you know, people didn't live very long, right?
True.
If you look at some of the Victorian England personalities, right, if you can get past the language, they were very bold. They were taught to be bold. You were trained as a child that when an adult came into the room, you shook their hand, you introduced yourself. You couldn't be shy.
Latin culture is like that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there was a saying in Venezuela, they always tell you, like, let people love you.
Give them a chance.
Yeah, like give them a chance. I guess that's what you say in America. You know, those were manners. You had to do it.
That is correct. So there's a saying, fortune favors the bold.
True.
Right? So
number one is that. What would be number two? This
one is tough. And because I've seen a shift in corporate culture on this. So my deepest personal philosophy about life is about failure. The most successful people that I've had the honor of not only meeting, but actually talking to and working with have failed. And corporate culture now is, no, you can't fail. And it's like, I know what they're saying. And that's usually a corporate culture that is under stress, right? So, because there's people who love perfection, who wants everything to run the right way, whatever that means. And I tend to look at that as a process-driven culture versus a results-driven culture, right?
Yeah.
And because I remember early on in my career, someone interviewed a CEO and he goes, what do you look for in a salesperson, particularly when, you know, they're working? He goes, how many quotes they get out? And they go, well, what about sales calls? What about visits? What about, and he goes, I don't care about any of that. He or she puts that quote out. They need to turn it into a result, and usually by that time, there's going to be a result. So, and he would say, I don't care if you're on the beach, I don't care if you're skiing, I don't care any of this. What are you bringing in? And that has totally shifted. Now it's all about process, and process is important. I came from a very large company, who remain nameless, that was very process driven, and I chafed under it because they told me the how, but they didn't tell me the why. What does this give? What is the end result of this? How does this help the customer? How does this help me? How does it help you, the team? So in sales, you have to be inquisitive.
Okay.
You've got to be.
Number three?
Yeah, you have to be inquisitive. You're going to hit a brick wall in sales. Just understand that. If you're not failing, you're not trying. So you're going to fail. You're going to hit that brick wall.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And
I agree. Like, if you're not doing it to the point of failing, you're not doing it right.
Right. It's always about stretch goal.
A lot of CEOs say that, actually. I think Jeff Bezos is one of them. If we're not failing, we're not doing it good enough.
Correct. And this is why it's so
So,
important to allow
yeah.
people to fail. And I can't remember if I told you this because you were such a self-starter. I just,
Look at me.
well, yeah, but because I remember
Yeah.
I was asked to just, kind of give you a helping hand. And I'm going, are you kidding me? She's already helping me.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you
Yeah.
stepped in and you stepped up, and I don't think that company will ever understand everything you did for them. I really don't, because
Mm.
I don't think they knew.
Yeah, fun fact, guys. We met through work of my
Correct.
previous role, and best thing that came out of that job was Dennis. And
Oh, thank
previous
you.
guest that you guys saw, Iman, she was another best thing that
Oh,
came out of that job.
I miss you too. I mean, it's not that we were necessarily,
We were a good team.
we were, but they
were-
weren't going to allow us to be a dream team.
No, they were not gonna allow us to be a dream team. But
Correct.
yeah, but it's okay. I think it's like when they're not seeing your worth, you gotta go somewhere else where they do. Don't take their no's and don't take their excuses and their mistakes as part of you, right? And that's what I did. I knew who I was going into that company, and I make sure that nothing that they did, I didn't take it on. Like their failures were not my failures because
is
I was
correct.
giving my 100%, and I was also doing everything I could in my power to help other people that were struggling in there.
Without any thanks or acknowledgement.
Right. I don't need those things, I don't need people to tell me thank you because I know I was taught to do the right thing even when people weren't watching.
No, you always did. You always did the right thing, and you did it because that's who you are, not because you wanted
Yes.
acknowledgement. But
Yeah.
I think what I didn't like is that, and you'll hear this, and I'm shocked. I hear this. It's 2024, and I still hear this. Well, we always did it this way.
So you never want to grow?
They're comfortable, so why
Yeah.
change? And this is I have a saying about communication, which is the biggest myth about communication is that it happened. You can't assume. Sales is going to teach you about communicating like you've never had before, and you're gonna sit there and go, oh my god, I'm Neanderthal. Because when you finally learn that niche part of you that gets the communication, and anytime you go into sales, they'll give you personality tests, and there's thousands of them. It just barely scratches the surface.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Different styles, different personalities, different approaches, different.
And that changes throughout the day, depending if your blood sugar, right?
Yeah.
Is low, how much caffeine you had.
Yeah. What would be number 4, Dennis?
Humility. You
That's a good one, yeah.
You have to have humility, because I'll give you a quick story. I just got my sales job. I was a project manager. So I was already running a metals lab, and I got that up and going. And that was tough because I had to deal with people, well, we always did it this way. And I go, we're an EPA contract lab. We have to follow these rules. There's no other way around it, right?
Yeah.
And people came to the realization that this was a better way to do it, but it was kicking and screaming. So I got promoted up the food chain. Don't sell things or do things that's going to slow your team down. All the awards that I've gotten 3 awards for being global sales leader, more than anyone else, either ever or in the world.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying for that. I was just doing my best work, and it ended up happening. And I was clicking with the team. And if you've ever been at one of these companies, I'll always sit there and I go, this award is just not for me. It's for the team. Because I had a good team behind me. So I value those people. That's where you need the humility. And you have to understand, I had to understand, as a scientist, I had to stop communicating like a scientist. I had to communicate not only like a businessman, but more like a human being. I can't be this robotic. So that's where the humility comes in. Hey, I'm not communicating. It's my fault. I'll tell you the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me in sales. I just got the job. The VP yelled at me because he goes, Dennis, why do you want to go into sales? Because I want to help people. Oh, he yelled at me.
They don't like that answer.
He stood, pounded the desk, and he goes, no, you got to grab the brass ring. And I go, where's the brass? What are you talking about, brass ring? There's no brass ring here. What are you talking about? He didn't last long. He upset one of my big customers and said, either this guy goes or we take the business somewhere else. By the way, it's not luck, it's God at that point. Okay. I had a group of people. This was back when I used to hit a gym when I was an athlete. So we'd sit in jacuzzi, and there was a very famous coach at UC Davis. I didn't know who he was. He was just a really cool basketball coach for UC Davis. Always had a good story for me. And I'm sitting in the jacuzzi, and I'm like, just like a beat puppy. And he goes, what happened? And I told him. And here's what he says. He goes, yeah, they're right. You're not cut out for sales. You should stop. I got mad. I go,
Oh.
how dare you? You know, what's that? And he goes, that's the right attitude. Get up from that failure. So that whole thing taught me my first step of the journey of true humility, self-awareness, and not quitting. And you have to have all of that has to be rolled into one. And it's hard because there's a point of you that says, oh, these people are crazy. I'm crazy. The world's crazy. But that's sales.
What would be number 5?
Find a mentor.
Ooh.
Find someone to mentor you, because there's a ton of sales books out there, and I've read the majority of them, and they don't make sense. And here's why. The person that wrote it, it made sense to them. It might not make sense to you.
That's true. Honestly, before meeting you, I didn't truly had a good mentor.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so, like, you're so right. Like, a mentor is so key. Because I've learned so many things from you.
And
you know?
you've taught me some things, believe it or
Yeah.
not. I mean, I've watched you walk into a room on fire, and you come out smelling like a rose and put the fire out. And I'm like going, wow.
But it goes back to trauma, remember?
Yeah, no,
We were built to just turn off fires all the time.
no,
And that sometimes is triggering, because then sometimes I jump into
a fire. You shouldn't willingly. The
Yeah.
other thing, if I can throw like 5.5 or 5 is, and I just had a conversation with one of my colleagues. She's brilliant. This is probably more important, and this is to me a sign of the world we're living in right now. It's good and it's bad. Branding. You have to create a brand.
Very important nowadays. Very. Part of what I'm doing with my podcast is branding
Correct.
for myself.
Correct, because people will make assumptions about you. So a brand sets the stage of who you are or who you could be. I know that sounds weird of who you could be, but work on your brand. And you know, I would say the older description of what that was your honor.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they talked about in Victorian England. You know, are you
Honor, yeah.
honorable? Right?
I think branding is important too because of the competition. There is so much more competition nowadays that branding is very key.
How I say this, most people don't care about you. It's not a bad thing. It's just that they don't have time. And that's another thing you can learn about sales. People will ghost you. They will not call you back.
Don't take it personal.
So my philosophy in sales is I do my very best. I inform my customers the good, the bad, the ugly. I always leave them an out. Hey, if this doesn't work for you, I completely understand. I still want to earn your business, right? And maybe it'll be later.
Yeah.
But I will always be there. And I want them to know that they can come to me, they can talk to me, I will listen, I will advocate. So here's what I tell my customers now. This is so true. When you're in sales, you're a servant.
Yeah, you are. You have to be.
You are a servant. You have to sit there and understand what they want.
Yep.
You have to read it back to them. You maybe once or twice. You have to ask them, has anything changed? And if you can show that customer that, believe it or not, your sales will get easier because they will call you.
Yeah.
You don't have to call them. And that my success has came from building a network, not only within my customers, but with other service providers, such that when someone said, hey, Dennis, you've helped me in the past before and I really appreciate it. Who would you recommend for this? Because I know you don't do it, but do you know someone? And I go, yeah, hang on here. I mean, if you got time, I know exactly where she is. I'll grab her. Can we meet in 2 hours? And he goes, yeah. And when you help them, they're just so thankful. I'm not getting anything out of it other than goodwill. There's one of my other favorite sayings is the only thing a competitor can never take away from you is goodwill. The goodwill that you've
and good customer service.
Yeah, well, but that's where having a good team is.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So sales will be the toughest job you ever had in your life. It will be the most rewarding.
All right, just before the break, I want you to throw a number just to flex. What's the largest amount sold?
Per year, over 10 million.
Wow.
Over 10 million. And
Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted you to mention, because some of these listeners may say, oh, well, who are you, right? Some people like numbers and they want to know, okay, what's the amount? Hey, we're talking with somebody who's really experienced, and that you've done it. 10 mils is a lot.
Well, so since the beginning of my career, it's gone up and up and up because I'm always looking for that next challenge. And the bigger sales take longer. It's more relationship building, but I absolutely love it. But the other thing is, if you're going to write a sales resume, no one cares about what you did in college. They want numbers.
They want numbers. So
they want numbers. They want growth.
That.
They want percentages. Now that's the bad side of sales, because and people are going to say, oh, well, that's just horrible. Well, that's what you're hired to do. And here's something else I'm going to tell you. Your job in sales is to work yourself out of a job.
Ooh. All right. Well, we're going to go to break.
Today's episode is sponsored by RenovateMagicHub.com, your guide to transforming your home. Whether you're updating a room or planning a full makeover, Renovate Magic Hub provides tailored product suggestions to suit your style and budget. Visit RenovateMagicHub.com for inspiring and practical tips to create a space you'll love.
All right, guys, we're back. So,
The other thing that, if I can, this one's very important. You can't have an ego in sales. Customer will throw a curveball at you and they want to see how you're going to react. And what you do is you just sit there and I smile, I laugh. True story. I knew the director and he goes, Dennis, I'm so glad you're here. Here's where we need help. I'm going to put you in touch with the senior scientist, PhD, right? PhD, you got to give them credit. It was very hard for them to get that. You know, this is where that humility comes in and you have to recognize everything they did to get there. So when he introduced me, I put my hand out because this was way before COVID, by the way, and he didn't want to shake my hand. So his boss, the director, says, how come you don't want to shake Dennis's hand? And he goes, because I think salespeople are vectors, i.e. we transmit diseases.
yeah.
I just started laughing. I mean, I got a belly laugh out of it. And he goes, why are you laughing at it? And I go, well, it's kind of true and it's kind of funny. We got along famous. So leave your ego out of it. People are going to do this to you all the time. But it was an IQ test and I guess I passed.
If you guys have more questions, go find Dennis.
Yeah, anyone can find me. Oh, by the way, everyone calls me Dennis Price. I really go by Dennis M. Price.
Then I want to circle back to your background because you briefly talked about it. Your mom, you know, she grew up in the war. How did that shape? Obviously, you talk a little bit about like the traumas and the way they were at home. Did she ever change? Because you moved here.
This is truly written in her DNA, and they've actually done some studies that people who go through PTSD, their DNA changes, and
that's insane.
And their children's DNA carries it. So I've got a little bit of, well, I remember after my father died, she was storing water in the garage. And I had to tell her, Mom, you can't, the water is only good for maybe a week. You can't do this. And she goes, but I can boil it. And I go, no, Mom, that's actually true. But I'll buy you bottled water, which will last. And then, you know, you can drink it over time. She had food stored up. But you never lose that. She is worried about what's going on in Israel, the war going on there, Syria. She's worried about what's going on in Russia as well. And I go, Mom, yeah. So it's in her DNA. I feel sorry for her. Yeah. I try to calm her down, say, no, Mom, it's fine. So I stock up food for her so she can see it. And I stock up water so she can see it. This is why you shouldn't be cruel to people because you never know how it's going to affect them and for how long.
Yeah.
I lived in 3 cultures, right? Probably very similar to you.
Yeah.
So I had a military culture, right? Because my father was in the military. I'm the black sheep, right? I'm not wearing this dark clothing for, you know, just for nothing. I was the black sheep of the family. My father actually got me a West Point, a position to get in the West Point. And he didn't ask me. He was a sergeant and I told him, no, I want to be a chemist. He knew this. And I said, the military, they don't want me to make helpful things.
With chemistry, no. You're going to be doing some damage.
Correct. And later on, when I did get to work slightly, not heavily, but as a hazardous waste, because they used to do hazardous waste treatment, I was around nerve gas organophosphates. So I was around those. And I was horrified on how quick they can go through the skin and how fast they can kill you. I worked with all the nasty stuff, cyanide, you name it. But no, he was very disappointed. My father loved being out in the field.
Do you miss him?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
So he, like most people during that time, he drank. And he could be a nice drinker and he could be a very mean one. So he was very cruel to my mom and me. And I remember he used to call me college boy spinning my wheels by going to college. It was my mom who pushed me to go to college. And I owe her a debt of gratitude for that. But once I moved out of the house, he started understanding, particularly when he got very ill. The doctors were going, we don't know what's going on. And I called him out. I go, that's your job to figure out what's wrong with my dad. And here's one thing sales will teach you. How to be a difficult customer, right?
That too, yeah.
So you won't put up with half the stuff you normally do because sales will teach you all the tricks.
That's true.
So I motivated these guys to start helping my father, but by that time it was too late. So he died happy with who I was, which that's all I ever wanted.
That's good. I mean, that's all you could want, right?
Well, you know,
for peace of mind.
I'm not perfect.
No, I mean, no one is perfect. Yeah, no.
Correct.
For sure.
So that was on my journey of being humble and leaving ego out of it.
That makes sense. Do you think you're living the American dream that they were hoping for?
No, absolutely not. And part of it is, I think I told you this not too long ago. I was the original millennial before there were millennials. I never liked the status quo. I think life is about change. It has to be about change, hopefully good change. No one is really, I'm sure there are. Everybody.
I think it comes down to perspective. Some people feel, hey, I'm living the American dream because I have it better than my parents. And some people...
Well, definitely have it better than my parents, but that's not the American dream.
Well, for you, right? It comes down to perspective once again, right? Like, how do you see life? What makes you happy? What do you consider successful? What do you consider your rich life, so to speak? Some people feel like, you know what? I don't need a lot of material. I don't need a lot of money to feel successful and happy and content. And some people feel like, no, I do need at least a house, right? Like a house is like the biggest American dream thing.
But that's in jeopardy right now.
Right. And so I get it. It really depends on your perspective. Because I've had both guesses. Like people that say, no, I am living the American dream. And some people that are like, no, I mean, it's not much of an American dream.
If the American dream is defined, am I doing better than my parents? Sometimes I wonder if that's even true. I think I'm doing better than them. I think they were happier, but they learned to be happy with nothing. My mom still says this day, I could sit in a park with nothing with your father and be happy.
Yeah,
and
because the turmoil they had to live through.
I feel that way about Karen, right?
Who is Karen for the listeners?
She's the best thing that ever happened to me. What was really funny is my friend said, this is the only woman that can calm you down.
And that's key.
It was amazing because they go, how did she tame the savage beast? And she just has a habit of just coming up and then, how do you do that? I can't even calm myself down like that.
Because you're a special person.
Yeah.
And that's how you know you're with the right person. They can move you in ways you never thought it was possible.
And she would make me think when I would say something stupid.
Yeah.
She goes, what were you trying to do with that? And I go, okay, hang on. I'm figuring it out. And she goes, so you probably shouldn't do that. And I go, yeah, you're right.
I have one last question from the previous guest.
Okay.
And then you're going to leave a question too.
Works for me.
So, her question was, what's your mission statement in life?
This is going to say a lot about me, by the way. To improve who I am and to be happy about it.
Oh,
that's
a good one.
That has always been challenging for me because life will improve you whether you like it or not, but to be happy about it, because some of the people that I follow online, how can you be content versus happy? Because happy is fleeting.
Yeah.
Contentment is forever. The contentment is I'm open to change.
I'm open to change, yeah.
But I'm going to be
okay.
Zen. Okay. How many times did you send me, Dennis? Trust me, it'll be okay.
Oh yeah, I'm a big believer, especially nowadays, of like letting things flow and patient, because I believe in like there's a bigger purpose behind this moment.
I lose track of that because I overthink.
Yeah, you can't overthink. All right, Dennis, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Dennis M. Price. I'm
gonna put it on the video, guys. But how do you spell it? For people
two N's in Dennis. So Dennis, like Dennis the Menace, the original. M is in Michael, but it's the initial M, and then Price. I'll bring back my childhood. The Price is Right, Price-A-Roni.
That's like the best spot for people to find you?
Yeah, for right now. Just let you know, I help all strangers. Don't even worry about it. If you got a question, I hope to have an answer for you, but I feel my job is to help people.
Yeah, don't be afraid, reach out, guys. He's so friendly.
I want you to be happy.
Aww.
If the more people we have happy, the better life we're going to have. All of us.
There you guys have it. You heard it from Dennis Price. So until next time, see you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming into the show.
Thanks for the invitation. This was fun.
Thank you. All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Siris Says. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and drop a like. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more inspiring stories. Until next time, keep chasing those dreams.